Welcome everyone to the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. It is Wednesday, March 22nd at 2 p.m. here in Conference Room 325 at the State Capitol. My name is David Tarnas. I'm the chair of the committee. Vice Chair Takayama is here and other members will join us presently. If you're testifying today, I would request that you keep your testimony to about 2 minutes, and at that point I'll ask you to summarize when you take a breath. I try not to interrupt. It's important to have good manners. At least that's what my mother and grandmother always told me, so I listen to them. And if you're testifying via Zoom, same thing. If you could just turn on your mic and your camera only when you're providing testimony. Keep it off at all of the times. And when you're testifying on Zoom, please don't use any copyrighted or trademark images, because that causes us problems with our transmission on YouTube. And I would just ask everyone to conduct themselves as they would if their mother was in the room. So please be good and well-mannered, treat each other with respect, and it's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We're all here to do the work of the people of Hawaii. So we've got a number of bills that we're going to hear today. Thank you all to the testifiers who are here in person and on Zoom. Your testimony helps us improve the legislation that we produce here at the legislature, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. So first up, we have Senate Bill 1005 relating to the election of the president. This measure establishes a presidential preference primary and makes an appropriation. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Office of Elections. Mr. Scott Nago, thank you so much for being here, sir.
Good afternoon. The office will stand on its written testimony in support, and we would just like to note that we have a cost estimate of $3.3 million for the state share to run the presidential primary. And we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Could you actually, you've got, I count, 5 major things that you need us to address or you suggest. If you could just identify those.
So the first thing is on the opt-out. The most important thing would be the opt-out provision. Like we said last time, we don't register by party, so we wouldn't know which voters belong to which particular party. So we would have to send all ballots to all voters, and like the single party primary election, they would pick their party and only vote in that party. And then we have various technical amendments just to clarify, because this is a new type of election, and it may not necessarily fit with what's already existing in statute.
And so that's a calendar, like number of days. But then if you could talk briefly about the contest for cause deadline, that one, just describe what that is.
So currently we have 2 different contests for cause. We have one for the primary election, one for the general election.
You have to explain what that is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any candidate or voter can file a contest with the Supreme Court challenging the results of the election. So we have 2 different deadlines, one for the primary and one for the general. The general one is usually a little longer since there's not an election following. We just want to make sure that it's explicitly clear in this bill that it applies to 11173.5, which is also the primary election contest for cause.
Perfect. Thanks for that explanation. That helps us a lot. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Office of the City Clerk, Honolulu Elections Division in the City and County of Honolulu. Testimony with comments from the County of Hawaii Elections Division. Testimony and support from the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Mr. Dennis Jung. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you. May we submit in our written testimony subject to questions? Thank you.
Do you want to, you support the measure?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
You think it's a good idea? Okay, thank you. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Michael Golyo, Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Please proceed. Oh, he's not on Zoom? Usually is. We miss you, Mike. Okay, moving on. Comments. We received testimony with comments from Mitzi Higa, Democratic Party of Hawaii Labor Caucus. Comments from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii, Janet Mason. And we have testimony and support from the Kauai County Democrats, and testimony in support from Elton Fukumoto. Please proceed.
This is Elton Fukumoto. I stand on my written testimony in support.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Bart Dame. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members, if you're looking at this remotely. My name is Bart Dame. I'm testifying as an individual, but my experience has been derived from being very active in Democratic Party activities. And I'm trying to have a safeguard to make sure that there is no particular advantage to the Democratic Party that is not also accrued to the Republican and Libertarian parties. But I think that we will all benefit, and more importantly, the voters of Hawaii who want to participate in helping nominate their favored presidential candidate will benefit by having a shift from what is now a well-intended amateurish operation run by the parties to a professional and efficient operation run by the Office of Elections, by Scott Nadeau them. We think that the voters are entitled to this. In my testimony, I have a list of all the states that provide a state-run presidential primary. You will notice there are 44 of the 50 states believe that voters should have an efficient and professional-run presidential primary system, and they think it's worth spending taxpayer dollars on that. There are very few states that do not. Iowa, of course, has a cottage industry in having a caucus system, and they're sort of stuck with that. But of the other states, I've noticed that all of them are red states except Hawaii. And not that I'm saying the Republicans have bad ideas on this, but the DNC has been urging Democratic states to move away from caucuses and towards a more efficient and secure system by using a primary system. I'm available for questions if you have any questions. But I really urge you to pass this bill. I think it benefits the people of Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in addition, we have testimony and support from Barbara Dalton. Please proceed, Ms. Dalton.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. Thank you once again for the opportunity to testify in favor of this important bill that will grant the Hawaii electorate a vote in choosing the presidential nominees for the major parties. When considering testimony opposing Senate Bill 1005 and arguing for a closed primary, I urge the committee to keep in mind the August 15, 2016 decision by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the case of DPH, the Democratic Party of Hawaii, versus NAGO, which upheld Hawaii's practice of holding open primary elections. The court found that DPH did not show that the open primary system burdens its associational rights, nor that the open primary, quote, impacted its candidates or messages. As former Attorney General Doug Chin noted at the time, the open primary is part of Hawaii's commitment to make voting easier and to include more persons in the democratic process. Clearly, the matter of closed primaries in Hawaii was settled in 2016. Voters who do not avidly follow politics or serve as party officials simply don't pay attention to the minutia of how to help push their preferred presidential candidate toward the White House. Since 2008, inspired voters have wanted to turn out for the candidate that moves them, but have had little awareness of the process that really barely allowed them to do so. Motivated voters call the Office of Elections to find out how to pledge their support to a presidential candidate, and are in turn referred to their county clerk's office, where voter registration rolls are maintained. In years past, this has befuddled voters and election officials, as the political parties have relied on, among other things, haphazard caucusing, informal preference polling, or a party-run primary to have our voices heard. In 2016, roughly 35,000 Democrats caucused in the race between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders for the nomination, yet 266,891 voted for the Democratic nominee in the general election. In 2020, around 37,000 voted in the party presidential primary to select the nominee, while 366,130 voted for the Democratic presidential nominee in the general. This enfranchisement gap must be closed.
If you could summarize, please, Ms. Dalton.
A state-run presidential primary would close the gap, encourage voter participation. We must take vigorous measures to give better access to Hawaii voters. What better way to do that than to run a formal election? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. In addition, we've received written testimony, looks like 20 additional testimony than what we've already heard from, 27 in support and one in opposition. Is there anyone else here in the room that would like to testify in Senate Bill 1005? Is there anyone on Zoom that wants to testify in 1005? If not, questions, members? Vice Chair Takayama, please proceed.
For Mr. Nago, I'm just looking at your updated cost estimate, and one of the line items is $192,000 for counting center volunteers. If they're volunteers, what are we paying $190,000 for?
So they're volunteers in the sense that they're not employees of the office, but we do provide a stipend. So it doesn't come out to minimum wage. That's why we call them volunteers and we call it a stipend.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious, what is the stipend
I believe it's $85
per person?
per, it depends on how many shifts you work. So it's, since we're processing over multiple days, if you work more shifts, you get, the stipend is bigger.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Nago, we've received testimony from Hawaii County, City and County of Honolulu, but we with estimates as to what the cost would be, but we did not hear from Kauai or Maui.
So my understanding is they did provide testimony to the Ways and Means Committee, so I can reiterate to them to please provide testimony, but
It's okay, if they send something to the Ways and Means Committee, I'll go to those testimonies so I can get some numbers off of that.
yeah, I believe the numbers you could get the numbers off of that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? No other questions. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your testimony. Okay, moving on to the next measure. Senate Bill 975 relating to health. And this includes electronic smoking devices and e-liquids under the definition of tobacco products for the purposes of the cigarette tax and tobacco tax law. It does other things, but that's the big thing. It exempts electronic smoking devices and e-liquids from the excise tax on all tobacco products other than large cigars. And beginning in 2024, it imposes an excise tax on each electronic smoking device or e-liquid sold, used, or possessed by a wholesaler or dealer effective, and repeals the electronic smoking device retailer registration unit under the Department of the Attorney General, because that's no longer needed. It's going under the regular unit within the Department of Attorney General that deals with cigarettes. Okay, first up, 975, we have testimony and support from the Attorney General's office. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Rich Stacy. I'm a Deputy Attorney General, Unit Supervisor for the Tobacco Enforcement Unit. The department is in strong support of the bill, which would, for the first time, include electronic smoking devices and e-liquids within the definition of tobacco products under Chapter 245, which would allow Department of Taxation to tax and regulate them through licensing and permitting. This would help address the health dangers caused by vaping in Hawaii. Currently, my Tobacco Enforcement Unit is also serving to enforce the electronic smoking device retailer registrations. At last count, we had 695 retailers registered with us. 90% of those are also registered with DOTAX because they also sell other tobacco products. And as I pointed out before, it's basically duplicative, it's very inefficient, and it's very confusing. A lot of these retailers will call us because they'll be confused. Why do we have to submit a paper registration with the Attorney General and we're doing electronically with Department of Taxation? So combining vape products with the other tobacco products would make it more efficient and make our unit unnecessary. So we do support the repeal of Part 12, Chapter 28. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have testimony and support from the Department of Health. Thank you for being here. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama. I'm Lola Irvin, representing Dr. Kenny Fink for the Department of Health, and the Department of Health also strongly supports SB 975 HD1. We do have a preference for the Senate Draft 2 version, and we do recommend the full measure that is found in Senate Draft 2. The reason is that we are concerned about the youth use of electronic smoking devices, and we do ask for parity for what we have with cigarettes that has worked. So we have a graph at the very back of the document that shows how tobacco policies have affected the cigarette smoking rates for youth. But not having the parity, then we see the rise in e-cigarette use by youth. So we support this. What is missing is when we are requesting the reinsertion of the unlawful shipment and handling of tobacco products, right now you cannot legally order cigarettes online. Unfortunately, with the removal of this language from this House Draft 1 version, that would still be allowed. The other thing is the reinsertion of the definition of ESDs into tobacco products so that it would be taxed at the equal rate of other tobacco products. Having taken that definition out, there's also a ceiling that's set so that electronic smoking devices would not be taxed at a similar rate as other tobacco products. And we do find that in terms of price sensitivity, that youth are sensitive to price. We have historic documentation that it worked with cigarettes. And as the FDA says, there is no safe tobacco product. And so we would like a healthy future for our children, and sometimes that means then changing the policy landscape. And so we do beseech your help, and thank you so much for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have testimony from the Department of Taxation.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama. My name is Kathy Nee. I'm representing the Department of Taxation. The Department of Taxation did submit written testimony with comments. The department would like to respectfully note that we do ask that there is a defective date of January 1st, 3000 on the measure, but the department respectfully requests that if the measure is passed, that it becomes effective no earlier than January 1st, 2025. Because of the fact that we are creating a new tax category and tax rate, it allows the department time to implement. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Hawaii State Teachers Association. Welcome. Please proceed.
Mitsuhiga speaking for Osatue Jr., president of HSTA. We are in support of this measure. We need to do something. We absolutely need tax parity for our vaping products. Our students, as young as kindergarten is what the teachers are telling me now. It started with high school, middle school, then I heard a third grader, and now we're hearing kindergartners. They are being attracted to these vaping products. The parents are unaware until we tell them. It's not about punishing the kids, it's about going after the vaping industry, having tax parity, making it too expensive for the kids to be able to afford it with their little allowances. We have to do something, we have to do it now, and please, let's get this passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have testimony in support from University of Hawaii. Testimony in support from the American Heart Association. Welcome, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Takayama. We're offering comment on this bill because of the changes made in the HD1 version, but we mirror the Department of Health's request to revert back to the SD2 version. It's much cleaner, much more effective the way it's done in the SD2 version. We strongly recommend that you create parity. If you don't create parity, then the tobacco industry has a history of showing that it'll use that loophole to continue to market and drive young people to the cheaper products, which the young people are very price sensitive. So if you have a cheaper product, that's where they're gonna go. And so you need parity on this with other tobacco products. You've got our written testimony, which outlines a lot of the reasons why this is so important from a cardiovascular disease standpoint. You might hear testimony suggesting that e-cigarettes are safer. They're not safe. And the research that's being quoted by our opposition is about 10 years old. It was put together before there was an opportunity to really study these products, and the Heart Association and others have been doing a lot of research on this, and more recently the research has shown that e-cigarettes are at least as dangerous from a cardiovascular standpoint, heart attack and stroke standpoint, as regular cigarettes. And perhaps as we do more research, it could actually be worse, especially if people are using both products. So we hope you'll take our comments in line and revert back to SD2 version. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. This is Jade McMillan on behalf of the Tax Foundation. We've submitted some comments on the measure. We'll just stand on our comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Reason Foundation. Guy Bentley. Please proceed.
Chair Thomas, Chair Takayama, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. We are concerned with the SD2 version of the bill calling for tax parity. And the reason for that is when considering taxation of e-cigarettes and having parity with combustible cigarettes, it should be noted that the Food and Drug Administration recognizes there's a continuum of risk when it comes to tobacco products, with cigarettes being the most dangerous and e-cigarettes being far less dangerous, which is why several have been authorized as, quote, appropriate for the protection of public health, unquote. And that's exactly why the head of the Center for Tobacco Products at the FDA has said it's a positively good thing when smokers switch from cigarettes to e-cigarettes. And I'm afraid no one at the FDA is suggesting they're of anywhere near similar risk to combustible cigarettes. So for a sound public health policy, we would suggest that the optimal policy is to tax the most dangerous products, i.e. cigarettes, the most, and safer products, not safe, but safer products that have been authorized by the FDA and extensively researched, like e-cigarettes and nicotine pouches, at a far lower rate. But with that, you have my written testimony, and I'll stand on that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Americans for Tax Reform. Tim Andrews, please proceed. Oh, not here. Next, we have testimony in support from the Hawaii Public Health Institute. Thanks for being here. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Peggy Mirza with the Hawaii Public Health Institute. We stand in support of this measure. We do prefer the language found in Senate Draft 2 because that language addresses the online sales, which makes it easy for youth to access these products. It also creates tax parity in Chapter 245 because e-cigarettes would be incorporated into the definition of tobacco products, which doesn't break it into sort of this multi-level tax system for different parts of tobacco products. By treating tobacco products equally, we create ease in implementation. Tax parity also helps to ensure that people aren't switching from one product to the other, one product to the other. We keep it all the same. And that increased taxation is a CDC best practice to stop youth initiation as well as to decrease adult use. Finally, the FDA has recognized these products as tobacco products since 2016, and that aligns with a public view of the products as well. In a poll done by Ward Research in 2022, 91% of Hawaii registered voters stated that e-cigarettes should be regulated as tobacco products. The SD2 of the bill addresses these issues and creates a comprehensive regulation measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii COPD Coalition. Valerie Chang, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. I echo what the Department of Health, American Heart, and Hawaii Pacific Health Institute have testified on. I'm very concerned that we not have more and more people with lung disease because especially the young children are being initiated into smoking at such young ages. And most of the people that I know, there's 45,000 Hawaii adults with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. All of them didn't know when they got initiated into smoking that it was harmful. I mean, there were ads from physicians saying how smoking was a great thing. This is the new wave of young people that don't know any better. They really don't know. They believe that it's safe and harmless and just a good fun thing. And kindergartners, I mean, you can't get much younger than that. And it's really scary to me that there are no guardrails, and this legislature really needs to change the language back to SD2 for the reasons that have already been stated. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Certainly. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. Lindsay Strode. Next, we have testimony and support from Papa Ola Lokahi. Next, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii Medical Service Association. Everyone wants to hear you and with the microphone and see you on the camera.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Don Caricio on behalf of HMSA, we stand in our written testimony and support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Tina Yamaki with the Retail Merchants of Hawaii. Please proceed. Oh, she's not there either. Okay, next we have testimony and support from the Hawaii State Youth Commission, Logan Yogi. Please proceed.
Yes. Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Logan Yogi, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Hawaii State Youth Commission. We are in strong support with comments of SB 975 SD2. As representatives of the youth of Hawaii, the commission is committed to promoting inclusivity, opportunity, and progress. This includes the health of Hawaii's youth. That is why the commission strongly supports this measure, because its efforts to address the unlawful shipment of e-cigarettes, tax them as tobacco products, and license and permit sellers is crucial to decreasing tobacco use among youth, thereby improving the health and lives of both Hawaii's youth and the communities they live in. We respectfully urge the committee to amend the language of the bill back to the language found in Senate Draft 2. This is because a 70% taxation will ensure that e-cigarettes are taxed the same as other tobacco products, which in other states have helped to decrease underage tobacco use and the negative health effects of such products on youth and keiki. Furthermore, regulating online sales will prevent youth from accessing e-cigarettes and decrease incentives for youth addiction. By taking these actions starting this year, we can tackle the youth vaping epidemic and prevent more youths from being lost to addiction and disease. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to be answering any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have testimony in support from Melissa Rivas. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Melissa. I'm an MSW graduate student here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa with a specialization in health. The use of electronic cigarettes and e-liquids have similar risks to adverse health consequences, such as high levels of exposure to toxic chemicals used in e-liquids, both lung and cardiovascular, heart disease, and other highly dangerous chemicals also used as primary ingredients in weed killers, according to the American Lung Association, but can cause people asthma and lung cancer upon consumption. As an MSW in Hawaii, I am extremely concerned for our youth who have fallen vulnerable to the marketing strategies of the predatory e-cigarette companies. It is known that by increasing cigarette prices, we can significantly minimize the consumption of cigarette use in our youth and young adults. We need to impose a state tobacco tax on electronic cigarettes and e-liquids. The health of our youth and young adults need to be our priority. Taxing these products is another way to fight the e-cigarette epidemic, and I hope you can help us do so. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Julian Lipscher in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, members, I'm Julian Lipscher, testifying as a private citizen. The committee is encouraged to apply what's been a successful strategy for traditional tobacco products to electronic smoking devices and the epidemic of vaping among our youth. You have my testimony and support, and I'd like to summarize a couple of points. The bill would establish a needed regulatory structure. It would amend the definition of tobacco products to include e-cigarettes in HRS and require licensing and permitting for retailers and wholesalers. It is requested to better ensure the comprehensiveness and success of the bill to restore the language in SD2 to include both the device and the offending and dangerous e-liquids in the tax structure, defining the entire unit rather than the individual components, similar to what we do with traditional cigarettes, as we do not now separate the paper, the tobacco, or the filter in our tax structure. And finally, to impose a tax not less than but equal to the current tax rate imposed on other tobacco products to ensure parity and prevent the economic differences between existing products. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Valentino Miranda Kepa. Next, we have testimony in opposition from Richard Marianos. Please proceed.
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to testify. Three things I want to point out and why I'm in opposition to this, and I think it's important. I'm the retired assistant director at ATF, currently a professor at Georgetown University, working with law enforcement. I totally understand and agree with one of the woman's statements about protecting our children from this. But if we raise these taxes, inevitably what is happening around the United States, and will happen to you also, is it brings in criminal activity, it brings in the black market, and it brings in individuals, which make it far easier to sell to children. If you look at California right now, it's not the industry, it's counterfeit Chinese vapor products that are being sold out of stores. 9 out of 10 locations right now, and that's where the kids are getting it from. In terms of creating crime, the black market allows drug dealers, gun runners, criminals, gang members to sell this stuff on the street because they can make as much money from selling narcotics as they can with vapor products and tobacco products out there because they're in such high demand. Not just with youth, but with individuals that are trying to purchase it at a lesser price. Finally, one of the most important things, and I believe this so much, that in order to have a healthy community, we need a safe community, and it's the antithesis, and it's totally against police reform. To get our law enforcement officers to start trying to regulate people for tobacco products and vape products or going out there, they need to be serving and protecting nowadays and not having negative interaction on small regulatory offenses. It's very simple. Let's enforce the violation of the individuals that are selling to the children. Let's enforce the criminal acts that are being committed. Let's not tax this into a black market where kids can get it easier. And let's work towards public health in conjunction with public safety. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That's all the testimony from individuals that said they would be here in person or via Zoom. Is there anyone else that would like to testify in Senate Bill 975? Yes, please, come on up, introduce yourself. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support. So vapes are evolved tobacco products, and the FDA classifies vapes as tobacco products, mostly for tax purposes, like a lot of previous testifiers have mentioned, but also for its statutory purposes. Okay, so if the laws are not amended to say tobacco products, it impacts the way, let's say, the chapter about underage smoking, right? If it only says tobacco, then there is no violation for tobacco products. So that's why the law has to be amended so that things can be addressed accordingly. So the vape youth epidemic in middle schools and high schools, as noted by the CDC, is a result of evolved tobacco products. The U.S. Surgeon General has declared vapes are a public health concern, and it is an epidemic which affects youths. I'd also like to point out, as we're discussing youth and vaping and health, that there is a chapter, HRS 302A-102, and it says smoking is prohibited and the use of tobacco at public schools or public school functions are prohibited. So it doesn't include tobacco products. So as you can see, there are a lot of things that could result if tobacco products is not amended in statute.
Thank you. You want to summarize, please?
Yes. So in closing, we do support the amendment. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 975? Just so everyone knows, the total number of testifiers on this measure, 60 in opposition, 60 in support, 17 in opposition, and 6 with comments. And we heard from everyone who is here or online. Anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 975? If not, questions, Vice Chair? Nope. Thanks for that very comprehensive testimony from everybody. I think we've got the information we need. We will move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 1418 relating to noise pollution. This measure establishes that a person's conduct that produces or causes to be produced noise exceeding a certain decibel level during nighttime hours in any area zoned as residential or mixed-use residential is an unreasonable noise that constitutes the offense of disorderly conduct and appropriates funds for enforcement. On this measure, we have testimony in support from the Department of Health. Welcome. Floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sean Haruna. I'm with the Department of Health Noise Section, and we stand on our written testimony, and I'm available for questions.
If you could briefly summarize your testimony, because it's got a lot in it. For just 2 pages, it's got a lot in it.
We do support the intent of the bill in trying to protect the public from excessive noise, and we welcome the opportunity to offer training and certification to counties or whoever will be taking sound level readings.
Okay, I think you also are requesting an additional 1 FTE, is that correct? Am I reading this right?
Yes, to conduct the training.
To conduct the training, and you're also requesting, and that would be a environmental health specialist 4.
Yes.
Okay, and then you're also requesting purchase of sound level meters, 2 per county, 4 for Honolulu, and you give us a price for that?
Yes.
Yeah, and then also funding for a training program, and you give us a price for that. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's
okay.
accurate.
Just want to make sure those who are listening out there, all of your fans, I want them to know what you're testifying on.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Welcome, Mr. Tom.
Chair, Vice Chair.
Floor is yours. Please proceed.
Members of the committee. Well, Chair, Vice Chair. Department's Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department is in opposition to Senate Bill 1418 SD2 HD1. Make no mistake, the department does understand that noise pollution is a real concern. However, the opposition stems mainly from the manner and the approach kind of SD 1418. Trying to get an accurate decibel reading is very difficult. Our understanding from speaking with various agencies that actually use decibel meter machines, it sometimes takes approximately up to 20 minutes to get a reading, and that sometimes includes or does not include actually taking it back, then stripping away ambient noise to get an accurate reading, which this type of offense would need when going in to prosecute these cases. Understanding that when these charges are beyond a reasonable doubt and we deal with, I guess, devices, electronic devices, there's always an issue that we have to deal with in court on calibration, accuracy, bringing in experts, all those types of things that cause very difficult and real problems in prosecuting these types of cases. We understand that they do have, just a real world situation. Officers do have a decibel machine. They walk up to somebody that's making noise. They would have to then kind of start getting the decibel reading. The individual stops playing music or doing something, start all over again, right? We can run into that problem all the time. I'm also aware that they do have decibel readers that you can just kind of a snapshot, but those are very difficult to get a very accurate reading. You have to have a lot of the sound excluded when you're taking that reading. So although we do oppose, we are working with the mayor's office, the city council, as well as HPD. We believe that a bill that's being heard, Senate Bill 224, which is 4 bills down, is a better approach to this. It's creating a mechanism for infraction offenses that we are working with the city to hopefully enforce noise pollution more efficiently. I will be here for any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in opposition from the Honolulu Police. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. I'm Randall Platt, Major with the Honolulu Police Department. We stand on our written testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 1418. And just very quickly to summarize it, we feel, as mentioned earlier by the Mark Tom with the prosecutor's office, that the use of a decibel level meter for police officers is somewhat cumbersome and time-consuming, and not the best use of police resources, particularly between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. when our call volume is the heaviest. There are also challenges with the bill in regards to the accuracy of the sound, the methodology involved with taking it, being able to prosecute it. So those are concerns of ours as well. We do recognize, however, that noise is a concern for Waikiki constituents as well as statewide. It's a state bill, so statewide. But we feel that effective legislation is more effectively crafted in collaboration with other government agencies, us, the prosecutors, the attorney generals, court counsel, as well as stakeholders, the neighborhood board, and other community members. So I thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'll be available for questions.
Thank you very much. We have testimony in support and a couple in opposition from numerous individuals. Is there anyone else here that wishes to testify in Senate Bill 1418? Yes, please come on up, introduce yourself, and proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Judiciary Committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES and in strong support. So I spoke to the author of the measure, and she had said that there were other initiatives for like monitoring noise, and I think she did mention that they're going to work with HPD directly. So, you know, because it is something to protect our communities from, therefore we support it. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, Vice Chair? I have a question, Major Platt. In your testimony, which I really appreciate the detail in it, let me quote one paragraph. HPD also feels that excessive amplified sound can be reduced via other strategies. Much of the testimony in support of this and Honolulu City Council Bill 43 in 2021 relating to amplified sound in Waikiki centered on excessive noise from street performers. The legislature may want to consider a partial ban on street performers on amplified sound after certain hours, for example 10 p.m., in designated areas of Waikiki, rather than taking an all-encompassing statewide approach. I'm intrigued by that. The legislature can't make legislation that is specific to a geographic area, unfortunately.
Mm.
However, I think, couldn't the city council do that?
Yes.
Do you know if they're considering any such measure, or if they have considered such measures?
We are continuing to work with the city as well on noise in Waikiki, noise regulation in Waikiki.
Because I mean, what's driving this legislation is Waikiki.
Yes.
At the legislature, we're restricted as to how we can limit the geographic impact of or scope of particular legislation. We're not supposed to make it, site specific.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the city council really could address this, and it wouldn't have to be solved here.
Yes.
So I'm glad you're encouraging them. Please keep encouraging them. I think
Thank
that's
you.
a good idea. Okay, thank you. And I have a question for Mr. Tom. I'm curious, there was a suggestion from one of the testifiers that the Honolulu Police Department has the authority to ask anyone blocking the sidewalk and limiting the free flow of pedestrian traffic to move along. And a portion of the sidewalk that's designated as public space is mostly where street performers set up and perform. HPD could simply ask them to move along. I'm asking you, as a prosecutor, is that something that is a viable thing? I mean, perhaps the police have this authority, and I'll check with them next. But
yeah, that might be HPD after where they engage these individuals a lot. I don't think.
I could ask them whether do you have the authority to do that? If someone come on up, if you could.
Yeah. So basically, they have to leave a portion of the sidewalk clear, so they can be on a portion of it, but they cannot impede.
Yes.
Right? Because then that would fall under the disorderly statute. So what they'll do is they'll encourage the crowd to come in so that there is a passageway behind so people can walk behind, but then they'll do their breakdancing or whatever it is on like half of the sidewalk.
Okay, so that it may not be a solution then.
Right, not
yeah,
exactly.
not entirely. Mr. Tom, I'm just curious, in terms of this idea of the city doing a ban on street performers during certain time periods if they use amplified sound in a designated area of Waikiki. Is that a viable solution if we get the city council to do something like that?
I mean, that's discussions that we're having, at least with city council members, as well as the mayor's office and Honolulu Police Department. I think there are existing statutes that are in the ROH, which is the revised ordinance of Honolulu, that might be able to address it. We're just fleshing that out a little more and seeing how we can utilize those existing statutes that might need, it still needs some tweaking to it to kind of encompass some of the issues that we are dealing with in certain areas in Oahu. However, it is something that we are having ongoing discussions with to utilize those statutes with some amendments that we have to make.
Okay, well, I mean, while this committee may be interested in moving this measure forward, I think that there's a limit as to what we can do, as you know, from our limitations on geographic scope. So as I encouraged Major, I would encourage you as well to work with the city council, because I really think that they would have better tools to be able to address this more specifically to the problem area, which appears to be Waikiki.
Understood, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, sir. Any other questions, members? Representative Ganadin, please proceed.
Mark. Hey, afternoon. As written on page 3, on part B, the new added part, person's conduct produces or causes to be produced noise exceeding 80 dBA. Do you expect, let's say, a state's witness to come forward with a decibel meter or with evidence to support a charge?
Based on the language here, we would need somebody, it would probably, my understanding on how this bill was envisioned is that an officer would be carrying a decibel reader. So that decibel reader would be done by the officer, and that reading would then have to be testified to in court. We'd also have to lay the foundation that the decibel readers working properly is calibrated properly. So to answer your question, yes, somebody would have to testify that they were standing there, did get a reading. Once we lay foundation, then they could give the reading that they received, stripping away hopefully any ambient noise.
Like a speed gun or something?
Similar to a speed gun. I do not know all the moving parts of a decibel meter and how they relate to a speed gun, but yes, ideally somebody would have to actually use the machine and then have to testify that they got a reading.
So as written right now, it's an SD2, HD1. Do you expect residents to call the police against other residents, for chickens, dogs, fireworks, parties, first day luau's, a variety of things? Like, what do you expect?
The whole gambit is out there. I do not know, as the best person that probably could explain this is the types of calls that HPD does get regarding noise violations. We just enforce the tickets that actually come through our office. So sometimes if a ticket's not given, we would not actually know that these are the types of noise violations that might be enforced using a decibel meter. My understanding on the decibel meters, sometimes they're used for loud, I guess, air conditioners or whatnot when there's civil issues. But I do not know how they would be utilized here in criminal, as this would be kind of new ground.
All right, one more, Chair.
Sure.
Disorderly conduct, is that a petty misdemeanor?
Disorderly is a petty misdemeanor.
Okay, if you, can it rise to a misdemeanor?
Under the disorderly 711-1101, my understanding is it's a petty misdemeanor. However, there is a statute under there that could be a violation, but I do not believe that it charges up to a full misdemeanor.
Again, for education of the public and the committee, does a petty misdemeanor include jail time?
A petty misdemeanor does include jail time.
What is the maximum amount of jail time for a petty misdemeanor?
Petty misdemeanor is up to 30 days, up to $1,000 fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? If not, thank you very much to the testifiers. Appreciate that reality check about what you face out there. Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 763 relating to affordable housing. This measure temporarily exempts affordable housing projects under certain circumstances from specific state and county fees and exactions related to discretionary approval or ministerial permitting, except application fees payable to the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation and the rates and fees of the various boards of water supply. On this measure, we have testimony and support from BIA Hawaii, Stephanie Sakamoto, and testimony and support from DBED, Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. Anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 763? If not, since there's no one here testifying, we're going to move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 1040 relating to homelessness. This measure requires the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to establish the Native Hawaiian Supportive Housing Pilot Program on the leeward coast of Oahu to provide individual or shared micro-housing units and services to Native Hawaiian beneficiaries who are homeless or threatened with homelessness and who are on the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's waiting list, and it appropriates funds. First up, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. O Oriana Leal Ko'uinoa, DHHL's Nahaza Government Relations Program Specialist. The department stands on its written testimony with comments, and I'm available for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Mahalo. Next, we have written testimony from numerous individuals and organizations in support. No one else said they're going to be here to testify, but I want to ask, is anyone here who would like to testify in Senate Bill 1040? Either in person or online? Seeing none, questions, members? Seeing none, thank you very much to the testifiers. We'll move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 784 relating to airlines. This measure requires the Department of Transportation to establish and implement a 2-year airline subsidy pilot program at Molokai Airport to assist airlines in offsetting the costs of operation. The measure also appropriates funds. First up, we have testimony in support, testimony in opposition from the Attorney General, Marjorie Lau, Deputy Attorney General. Thank you. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Marjorie Lau on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General. And the department respectfully opposes the bill in its current form as described in our comments with a request for amendment. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for questions.
Could you summarize the amendment just in general? You don't go through the details, but what is it?
The concern we have, and we've expressed it in previous committees, is that it fails to include standards or provide standards with respect to the subsidy. And Article 7, Section 4 of the Hawaii Constitution provides in part that no grant of public money or property shall be made except pursuant to standards provided by law. So what we've included here is the request to amend to include such standards and some possible examples of what could be included.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next, we have testimony and support from the Department of Transportation. That's all the testimony that we've received. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 784? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to the testifiers. We'll move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 214 relating to public transit. This measure establishes the offense of interference with the operation of a public transit vehicle. First up, we have testimony comments from the Attorney General. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. I am Deputy Attorney General Michael Minkins, testifying on behalf of the Department of the Attorney General. I'm standing in for my colleague, Deputy Attorney General David Williams. The department offers comments on this bill. We see no legal issues or constitutional infirmities. We simply have an amendment which we believe would promote clarity and consistency within the law. The amendment has two parts. As the committee knows, there is a law currently on the books that's interference with the operator of a public transit vehicle under Section 711, 1112 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes. That law criminalizes interference with the operator of a public transit vehicle. However, if you read it closely, it does so by criminalizing interference with the operation of the vehicle through interfering with the operator. In order to demonstrate that each of these laws, the bill and the law on the books, have different intents or goals, with this bill being interference with the operation of the vehicle and the currently existing law being interference with the operator, the department proposes dropping the language referring to operation of the vehicle from the existing statute. The second part of the amendment is simply to bring the definition section of the existing law as well as the law that this bill proposes into conformity. Essentially, there's some minor differences as well as some technical aspects in the way the definitions are set forth, and the amendment proposed by the department would bring those two into conformity. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Kirby Shaw with the Disability and Communication Access Board. Testimony with comments from the Office of the Public Defender. Welcome. Mr. Tabe, please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. James Tabe, State Public Defender. We do offer comment on this bill. We do think the problem we have with it, or our concern, is that the term unreasonable interruption may be constitutionally vague because the term lacks precision. It doesn't provide a standard for a person or a citizen to determine what conduct is forbidden. I mean, because what constitutes interruption and what is going to constitute unreasonable? I mean, holding a door, I'm going to use the rail car as an example. Holding a door for 10 seconds, unreasonable? Probably not. It may interrupt it, it may slow the train down. 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, there's going to be circumstances. So these, that vague term, it leaves it up to the, I don't think there's going to be police officers at these things, or it's either security guards or rail agents or whoever it may be. It'll be up to them to decide, since these are, driverless vehicles apparently. So we do think it's vague, and we think it is. It can be challenged constitutionally. So otherwise, we stand in our testimony available for questions.
Thank you very much. Next testimony in support from Honolulu Police. Please proceed, Mr. Bodie.
Aloha, I'm Captain Parker Bodie of the Honolulu Police Department. The HPD supports this bill, and we stand by our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, testimony and support from the City and County of Honolulu Department of Transportation Services, Roger Morton. That's all the testimony we've received. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? If not, questions, members? Vice Chair Takayama, please proceed.
I have a question for Captain Bodie. To your knowledge, has there anyone been arrested or charged with operation or with interfering with an operator of a transit vehicle, to your knowledge?
Yes, sir. There's been multiple. I don't know the exact number, but there are incidents where suspects have interfered with the operator.
And what kind of, I mean, are these, I don't know how to characterize it, but, what is it usually? Is it a intoxicated person or someone who's trying to commit theft, or what kind of cases are these usually?
There's a wide range. We saw during COVID, during the pandemic, where OTS required masks on public transportation, and say an individual came on without a mask, the bus driver would ask them to put on their mask, and that is at times created an assault against the bus driver.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? I have a question for the prosecuting attorney. No, prosecuting attorney. I know you didn't testify on it.
Let's go.
But you're here, and so I want to ask a question using your keen legal mind.
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but
Ha,
Mr.
ha,
Beacon
ha,
was
I
also
agree.
a prosecuting attorney. But okay, I'm here.
There you go. I'm sensitive to the testimony from the public defender saying unreasonable interruption is a vague term. How would you interpret what that means, unreasonable interruption of a public transit system or service?
Well, I think at least for the constitutional issue, that would be addressed by the Attorney General. After
I'll
their
ask
review, they did not appear to have an issue with the constitutionality of the vagueness. So just based on the issue itself, we would probably look at the report and see external factors. What else were they doing other than maybe just holding the door? Now, if it's holding the door for somebody to come in, was that it? Probably you would hope that there would be no citation that came in for that. If the person held the door, waited, held the door, I would hope that the report that came in for us for a charge or no charge would have other extenuating circumstances that would indicate that this was unreasonable and was not somebody just holding the door for an elderly person trying to make their way to the transit car, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And I want to ask the Attorney General the same question. I know you reviewed this and you thought there wasn't any big constitutional problems with it, but I, again, want to honor the public defenders identifying that unreasonable interruption is just simply too vague and ambiguous. What's your sense
Sure.
of that?
Thank you, Chair. With respect to the unreasonable standard, the criminal code is replete with the reasonable standard. It's a longstanding tradition, with the caveat that the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of the state constitution. The Department of the Attorney General does not share this concern. I don't have the entire criminal code before me, but just as a few examples, in the terroristic threatening statute, there's a section for simulated firearm, and that turns on whether the object can reasonably be interpreted as a simulated firearm. With regard to, say, custodial interference, one of the defenses is whether a person reasonably believed they were acting to prevent harm to the child. In harassment, it's whether a person reasonably causes another to believe they're about to be subject to bodily injury. And just in general, our entire criminal code is built upon the proof beyond a reasonable doubt standard. So it's baked into the criminal code from the very beginning. We see it in a number of statutes. Again, the Supreme Court has the final say, but the Department of the Attorney General does not have the same concerns on this matter as the Department of the Public Defender.
Okay, thank you. I'm holding back from asking you about the reasonableness of a Jack Daniels dog toy, but we'll leave that to the U.S. We'll leave that to the U.S. Supreme Court. Yes, Representative Ganadin, you had a question?
I didn't mean to. Yeah. Page 2 of the bill, B, mentions it includes any transit vehicle used for the transportation of passengers in return for legally charged fees or fares.
Does that include like Uber, rideshare, that kind of a thing? As written, it sounds like it does.
As defined it.
I mean, there's thousands of people offering these services throughout the state of Hawaii. So this bill, of course, doesn't just apply to bus drivers, but, you know, somebody who gives one ride here and there to the airport and back.
So without moving beyond the department's written testimony, I can't get back to you on this matter. I would just draw attention to the plural passengers in this definition section.
Uber X, I don't know, like the one where you take more than one person on it.
Sure.
Yes.
I can get back to you on that matter, sir, but
all right.
That would seem to be the case just based on the plural passengers within the definition.
Without passing this bill, is interference with an operator of a public transit vehicle already a Class C felony?
Yes, interference with the operator of a public transit vehicle is a Class C felony. This offense itself proposed within the bill is a misdemeanor, although there is a subsection which would bump it up to a felony depending on circumstances of the offense.
So the new operative language is on page 2, section 4, which adds misdemeanor?
So it states that without the serious injury, this offense would be a misdemeanor. If the serious injury is present, then it becomes a felony.
So it adds a lesser included offense?
It's not a lesser included offense, it's a separate offense. So the existing offense deals with interference with the operator of a public transit vehicle, and that's defined through causing bodily injury or threatening the operator. This bill and the offense it creates would instead deal with interference with the operation of the vehicle itself. So it's an operation of the vehicle versus interference with the operator.
So, oh, I get it. So would that be slowing down traffic? That could be a whole variety of things, right? You just have to go to trial on it.
That would go to the reasonableness of the interference.
So you could slow down traffic in a shared Uber pool and be guilty of a C felony?
No. The C felony requires serious bodily injury.
All right, misdemeanor then.
The law the bill creates goes to interference with the operation of the vehicle, not other vehicles within the road. So under the specific circumstances of the hypothetical you set forward, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you for going with my fact pattern.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? If not, thanks to the testifiers. Let's move on to the next measure. Senate Bill 224 relating to noise control. This allows for noise control infractions to be processed under the traffic and emergency period infractions adjudication process and grants the district court concurrent jurisdiction over noise control infractions committed by minors. First up, we have testimony with comments from the judiciary. Next, we have testimony in support from the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Mr. Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
Please
Chair,
proceed.
Vice Chair, members of the committee, and Chair, I joke around, but if I'm here and I can try to answer the question, it's always my pleasure to try to answer your questions.
You're so kind.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
The department, the Deputy Prosecuting Attorney, Mark Tom, for the department is in strong support of Senate Bill 228 SD 1.
224.
Oh, it's 224. 224, I apologize. 224. We are in strong support. It is part of our legislative package, so thank you so much for the committee for hearing this bill. As I've mentioned before in 1418 testimony previously, we are working with the city council as well as the mayor's office and HPD in trying to address noise pollution, noise concerns that are obviously a real concern that we're having in Oahu in various areas of the state. And through this bill, we believe that this would be a more efficient, more I guess a more preferable manner of trying to address these noise pollution issues. I will be here for testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Honolulu Police.
Afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair,
Sir.
Committee. My name is Blake Arita. I'm the Acting Lieutenant for District 6 Waikiki. Honolulu Police Department, we stand on our written testimony in support of Bill 224, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Great, thank you very much. We have testimony in support from, testimony in opposition from Gerard Silva. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 224? If not, questions, members? I have a question for the prosecuting attorney. The judiciary's testimony says they take no position on the intent, but they say there are operational concerns regarding this bill that may impact the courts. And they go on to discuss some of this. They're basically saying that if these are to be processed as traffic infractions, it might overwhelm them. And the concern that the designation of vast numbers of ordinances would overwhelm the traffic violations bureaus throughout the state. If this were to happen, judiciary may need additional resources. So they're saying the judiciary would be open to participating in a working group to determine how the designation of noise control ordinances would impact the courts and how the process should be created. I'm just curious, since this is a City and County of Honolulu proposal, was there any discussion with the judiciary about this?
I was not in any conversations with the city council, city and county. If the judiciary was in those conversations, I apologize, Chair.
No, it's okay. No, I'm just curious because it sounds like, you know, they are eager to participate in their concern about just the process and that the volume that they might be experiencing.
Understood.
So that may be, I guess I would just encourage you to loop in the judiciary on this because this is an ongoing issue and we'll see if we can address it with this. But I think the judiciary needs to be in the loop on those conversations.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, members? If not, thank you very much to the testifiers. Let's go on to the next measure. Senate Bill 1493, relating to lobbyists. This measure prohibits during legislative sessions and shortly before and after any lobbyist contributions and promises of contributions to any elected official or to any candidate or candidate committee who has received contributions or made or incurred expenditures of more than $100 in the applicable election period, requiring the filing of an organizational report with the Campaign Spending Commission. On this measure, we have testimony in support from the Hawaii State Ethics Commission. Mr. Harris, pleasure to see you. Floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to see you as well. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Robert Harris. The Ethics Commission is in support of this measure. Just briefly as background, this measure would regulate both lobbyists and candidates. The Ethics Commission has authority over lobbyists, and so, generally speaking, defer to the Campaign Spending Commission with regards to aspects dealing with candidates. That being said, we are offering a proposed amendment, which we have run by the Campaign Spending Commission. With regards to candidates, the definition of lobbyist includes those who take certain actions. And I can see from a candidate's perspective, they may not know who is a lobbyist or not. So we're proposing to amend the definition to say someone who's registered as a lobbyist in order to give candidates certainty they know who are lobbyists by looking at the registration sheets. On the flip side, however, as the Ethics Commission, we'd like to keep the language definition of lobbyist on our side the same, which would allow us to go after someone who is not registered, who is lobbying, and who is also making campaign contributions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Kam, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. The Commission supports this bill. We are asking for an amendment along the lines of other prohibited contributions that this committee provides, that a prohibited lobbyist contribution is to the election campaign fund. Thank you.
Could you translate that, please, Mr. Kam, into plain English? What is this cheat?
We're asking that if there is a prohibited contribution made by a lobbyist, just like for a prohibited contribution that is a false name contribution or an anonymous where you cannot return it to the contributor, that the legislature provides that prohibited contribution be transferred by operation of law to the Hawaii Election Campaign Fund.
Thank you very much for that translation to plain English. I want to make sure the public understands, because escheat is not a word that people use on a day-to-day basis. So transferring by order of law over to the, okay, so thank you very much for that. Thanks for your patience with me as I keep on asking people to speak in plain English. Next, we have testimony and support from Lynn Matasau and testimony with comments from Sean Tiwanak. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify in Senate Bill 1493? If not, questions, members? Nope. Let's move on. Thank you very much to the testifiers. Next, we have Senate Bill 1189 relating to campaign finance. This measure requires state legislators or the treasurer of their candidate committee to file a preliminary report on February 28th of the year of a general election. On this measure, we have testimony with comments from the Campaign Spending Commission. Please proceed, Mr. Kam.
Good afternoon again, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. The Commission submitted brief written comments on this bill, and I'll just stand on those comments. Thank you.
Thanks. And we have testimony and support from Lynn Matasau. Anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 1189? If not, questions, members? I have a question for Mr. Kam. When I read your testimony, I can't tell whether you support it or you oppose it or it's just comments. Do you think this is a useful bill?
Well, this would make a fourth report that would need to be filed by candidates. The fourth preliminary primary report, I should say.
I understand what the bill does. I just am curious whether you think it's a good idea.
Well, the way the bill is written, you could easily not have to file either this one or the one that is due in March by holding off on filing nomination papers, because these reports only apply if you're on the ballot, and you're not on the ballot till you file nomination papers. So I don't know if it's going to be effective, or are people just going to hold off on filing nomination papers and just to avoid filing this report. I will note in my comments that the original bill provided the reporting within 10 days of the receipt of any large contribution, which is fine that's more than $500 in the aggregate. I don't know if that helps, but that was the
So
original bill.
on your, and I was going to ask a question about your last sentence. If an incumbent office holder seeking election receives a contribution, as you described, there's no trigger that they have to report it until the regular reporting period is ended, and they have to file their report as per the regular deadline. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cam. Any other questions, members? If not, let's move on. Senate Bill 203 relating to complaints alleging violations of campaign spending laws. This measure allows the Campaign Spending Commission to treat a respondent's failure to explain or otherwise respond to a complaint alleging a violation of campaign spending laws as a presumption that a violation has occurred. This measure also provides that the respondent shall have 30 days from the mailing of the complaint to respond before the presumption takes effect. On this measure, we have testimony in support from Judge Dan Foley, who ran the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Next, we have testimony in support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Mr. Cam, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. We support this bill. This would allow us to make a recommendation to the commission if there is no response to our complaints, to just go ahead and proceed with determining that there is a violation. House Bill number 732, which is the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct bill, which is similar to this bill, was heard in the Senate yesterday, and it was passed out with an amendment to make it look exactly like this current bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the League of Women Voters of Hawaii and testimony in support from Lynn Matasau. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 203? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Next, Senate Bill 228 relating to fraud. This measure establishes the offense of fraud as a Class B felony. It also establishes the offense of making a false, fictitious, or fraudulent claim against the state or a county as a Class C felony. And it establishes the offense of the use of false statements or entries in matters within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, or judicial branches of the state as a Class C felony. On this measure, we have testimony in support from Judge Foley, Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct, and testimony in support from the Campaign Spending Commission. Please proceed, Mr. Cam.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. The commission submitted brief written testimony in support of this measure, and I will just stand on that. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Welcome, Mr. Tom. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department is in support of this bill, Senate Bill 228 SD1, with suggested amendments. This is part of our legislative package, so I, again, also appreciate the committee for at least hearing this bill. The one amendment, the amendments that we are suggesting in our testimony is to reinsert the language from the original draft Senate Bill 228, which does not allow for deferrals in the two fraud sections as well, the two false statement sections, and also to reinsert the non-probationable language with mandatory minimums in the fraud section. And these would ensure that there are safeguards, and these are very similar and mirrored off of federal statutes, and the safeguards will be to ensure that individuals are held accountable and that it would not incentivize or create any reason for an individual to commit these alleged offenses. So again, I appreciate the committee hearing this bill. I will be here for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Parker Bodie, Honolulu Police, in support. Please proceed.
Aloha, this is Captain Parker Bodie of the HPD. The HPD supports this bill and we stand by our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Next, we have testimony and support from Derek Carlin. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on Senate Bill 228? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you to the testifiers. Senate Bill 487, relating to statutory revision, amending or repealing various provisions of the Hawaii Revised Statutes or the Session Laws of Hawaii for the purposes of correcting errors and references, clarifying language, or deleting obsolete or unnecessary provisions. On Senate Bill 487, testimony and support from the Legislative Research Bureau. Reference Bureau should be.
Good afternoon, Chair. LRB stands out on written testimony and support, and I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. And we have testimony in opposition from Gerard Silva. Anyone else wishing to testify in Senate Bill 487? If not, question for Mr. Morsi, Legislative Reference Bureau. I wanted to ask, now you drafted, your agency drafted this measure, and it's something you do every session, is that correct?
Correct.
And it's basically cleaning up the messes that we might have created in the legislatures. I mean, you don't say that, but that's what you're doing.
You said it, I didn't.
Yeah, I got it, yeah. Okay, and you've reviewed this, and it's complete and accurate, and you're comfortable with this moving forward without amendment?
Yeah, and before we submit it for introduction, we also give it to the Attorney General, and they review it, and they didn't identify any issues, so we're pretty comfortable with it.
You're pretty comfortable, or are you?
Very comfortable.
Very comfortable, okay, good, because if we move this out without changes, the horse is leaving the barn. Just want to make sure.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and I appreciate your good work on this, Mr. Morsi, and to your team at the Legislative Reference Bureau. Any other questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Next, Senate Bill 1513, relating to public agency meetings. This measure requires a public agency board to report any discussion or final action taken during an executive meeting, provided that such disclosure is not inconsistent with the purpose of convening the executive meeting, but giving the board discretion to maintain confidentiality. On this measure, we have testimony and support from Cheryl Kakazu Park, Office of Information Practices. She's not available. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 1513? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Last measure on our agenda, Senate Bill 179, relating to advisory committees. This measure renames the statewide and county level voters with special needs advisory committees to elections accessibility needs advisory committees. Measure also recognizes that voting accessibility needs may arise from disabilities other than those of a physical nature. First up, we have testimony and support from the Office of Elections. Next, testimony and support from the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Next, testimony and support from Disability and Community Access Board, Hawaii Disability Rights Center, Voters with Special Needs Advisory Committee, Patricia Morrissey, and finally, testimony and support from James Gashel. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 179? If not, questions, members? No one asked questions of, so we won't ask questions. Okay, that's all the measures that we have before us today, so we're going to take a brief recess until we assemble quorum to make decisions. Recess. Welcome back to the Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs of the State House of Representatives. We are here for decision-making on the agenda, March 22nd, 2 p.m. agenda. For the purposes today, we're just doing decision-making. We've heard all the testimony on these measures, so let's move ahead on. First on the agenda, Senate Bill 1005. This is an important measure. 44 states have the state run their presidential preference primaries. We're one of 6 that do not, and it's time we start to move in that direction. We'll see if this one makes it all the way to the finish line. My recommendation is move forward a House Draft 1. I would like to adopt well, first I want to change on page 13, line 10, change the possessive pronoun that's referring to the chief elections officer or the county clerks. I want to change that possessive pronoun, which is currently his, and we should change it to the chief election officers or county clerks, those possessives. It may not always be his or him. Okay, and then I would like to also adopt the Office of Elections amendments. First up, I want to remove the provision in the measure to allow a political party to opt out of the state-conducted presidential primary in favor of conducting their own nomination process. This would be open to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and whatever other party that we've got that is approved at that time. So it's for all the parties. So no opting out here. I would like to I want to change the candidate filing so that the candidate filing is open 145 days before the presidential preference primary. So I want to change it that. I want to move the deadline for a group to qualify as a political party to 90 days before the close of candidate filing. I want to change the date of the presidential preference primary election to the first Tuesday after the first Monday in April. That should allow for the time that's necessary to meet the Hawaii Revised Statute requirements for when political parties are recognized as official for the primary election. And then I have some language to add to HRS 173.5 and 174.5. Those sections are contests for cause in the primary, special election, special primary elections, county elections. And what we're doing is adding in their language so that we can make it consistent, and it addresses the contest for cause deadline that's in the Office of Elections testimony. And so I want to include those. I want to make some technical amendments. Change the defective date to June 30th, 3000. And in the Standing Committee report, include the appropriations request, $3,395,703 for the Office of Elections, $775,000 for the City and County of Honolulu, $258,075 for the County of Hawaii, $147,500 for the County of Kauai, and $600,000 for the County of Maui. Those are my recommended amendments, and move this along as an HD1 to finance for further considerations. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1005 SD2 with further amendments, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin?
Aye.
Representative Holt? Excused. Representative Hashimoto?
Aye.
Representative Ichiyama?
Aye.
Representative Ilagan? Aye. Representative Kong?
Aye.
Representative Mizuno? Excused. Representative Souza?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, on Senate Bill 975, I would like to recommend a House Draft 2, so I would like to make some amendments to this. I did get prior concurrence from the Health Committee Chair. My recommended amendments include the following. On page 1, line 13 to 16, what I'd like to do is clear up some confusing language there by replacing the drug and device by saying that replace the phrase, quote, as those terms are defined in the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act with, quote, and subject to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. That would be more accurate. And then I would like to adopt the recommended amendments from the Department of Health that they provided to us in their testimony. Everything except for their recommended amendment on page 6, line 16 of the bill. There's currently a blank before the percent tax. The chair of Health Committee agreed to all the other changes, all the other amendments that the Department of Health had recommended, but she would like to keep that percent blank for further negotiations and further research that she is carrying out. This measure does move on to finance, so we'd be able to address it then. I would like to change the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and put into the Standing Committee report that the Department of Taxation would like the effective date January 1st, 2025. Those are my recommendations, members. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 975 SD2 HD1 with further amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Mizuno. Any WRs or noes?
With reservations.
Reservations noted for Representative Kong. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next on Senate Bill 1418. I am very skeptical about this bill. I don't think that the police are going to be able to implement it. Even with that skepticism, the introducer of the bill said, please move this on for further consideration, which I will accommodate her. But what I'll do is change the effective date to June 30th, 3000, so this will be an HD2, and put in the Standing Committee report the Department of Health's request for a position and funding, but also note in the Standing Committee report that I'm skeptical that the police would be able to implement this measure because of the challenges of actually measuring a decibel level in the field at the time when there is a potential violation that is occurring. But with that, I'd like to move it on to Finance. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Ganadin.
Chair, I think as written, the bill could be used to harass neighbors regarding overly loud parties, chickens, dogs, firecrackers, a variety of other things. Also, it's fairly unreasonable for complainants and those who testify before the state to walk around with decibel meters. I'll be voting no.
Understood, and I understand your rationale for that. Other comments or concerns, members? Nope. Okay, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1418 SD2 HD1 with further amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Mizuno for the remainder of this agenda, and the no vote of Representative Ganadin. Any other noes or reservations? Seeing none,
With reservations.
Noted reservations for Representative Kong. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 763, my recommendation to move out of HD2, House Draft 2, only with technical amendments. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 763, SD2, HD1 with further amendments. Any WRs or noes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On Senate Bill 1040, I would like to recommend moving out an amended bill, so this would be House Draft 2. On page 3, line 8, I want to remove the blank space that is there now, so that the sentence reads, the department may construct individual or shared micro-housing units that shall be situated on the leeward coast of Oahu. So we won't limit them with any number. And then on page 4, line 1, change the word communities to department so that the sentence reads, the department may allow for off-the-grid technologies that can provide drinking water, electricity, and processed sewage without existing infrastructure. With those two changes, I would like to move out a House Draft 2. I did get permission and prior concurrence from the Housing Chair. Thank you very much, sir. With those amendments, my recommendation is to move out a House Draft 2. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1040 SD2 HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, on Senate Bill 784 relating to airlines, I would like to recommend moving out of House Draft 2. I did get prior concurrence from the House Transportation Chair. I want to put an end date on the pilot program of July 1st, 2025. This is supposed to be 2 years, so that's 2 years from the approximate date of when this would come into effect. And then I would like to also adopt the recommended amendments from the Attorney General, which would include standards for the grants that would be in this bill in order to make sure that we are in compliance with the Constitution requirements. That's my recommendation. Any questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 784 SD1 HD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 214. I am skeptical about this bill too, but I think I'd like to move it forward. There's with a House Draft 1, I would like to adopt the Attorney General's recommended amendments in their testimony. I would like to change it from a petty misdemeanor to a violation and change the effective date to June 30th, 3000. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Ganadin.
Again, my thanks to you, Chair, and to your staff for working on this measure. However, I'll be voting no. I think it's too broad. It's going to apply to far too large a class of citizens.
Understood. Thank you for your discernment and your rationale for voting against it. That's valid. I can understand. Other questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 214 SD1 with further amendments and noting the no vote of Representative Ganadin. Any other noes or reservations? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Now, moving on to Senate Bill 224. This is what the city and county thinks is a better approach to dealing with noise as described by the prosecuting attorney from the city and county of Honolulu. On this measure, I'd like to recommend moving out of House Draft 1. On this, I would like to, rather than having to amend Chapter 291D to include, quote, noise control infraction, where traffic infraction and emergency period infraction appears, I would like to establish a general term, which is qualifying infraction, that includes the terms traffic infractions, emergency period infractions, and noise control infractions, and use that general term throughout Chapter 291D. That way, in the future, if the legislature wants to include more types of infractions under Chapter 291D in the future, it'll only have to amend the general term and not almost every section in Chapter 291D, trying to make it more efficient for future judiciary chairs. I would also like to make some technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and change the effective date to June 30th, 3000. I would also like to include in the standing committee report that I would urge the City and County of Honolulu to work with the judiciary to determine how the designation of noise control ordinances would impact the courts and how the process should be created. And also note that the judiciary requests that the effective date be January 1st, 2024. Those are my recommendation, members, to move out on HD1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 224 SD2 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, moving on to Senate Bill 1493 relating to lobbyists. I'd like to recommend moving out of House Draft 1, making some technical amendments, change the defective date to June 30th, 3000, and adopt the recommended amendments from the State Ethics Commission, which defines lobbyists for the purposes of this section to mean lobbyist actively registered with a state or county ethics board or commission. And I'd also like to adopt the recommended amendments from the Campaign Spending Commission, which adds one sentence, any contribution prohibited by this subsection shall escheat to the Hawaii Election Campaign Fund. And we defined that term for mere mortals in the discussion that we had. It just means to transfer by order of law. That's my recommendation, members. Any questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1493 SD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, Senate Bill 1189. I would like to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and move this out. This may not survive conference. Hearing the workaround that the Campaign Spending Commission has noted that he's not convinced that this would be useful or effective, but I would like to take this to conference and have a conversation with the Senate Judiciary Chair who came up with this idea. So move it out with a House Draft 1, defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1189 SD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes?
With reservations.
Reservations noted for Representative Kong. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 203 relating to complaints alleging violations of campaign spending laws. On this one, I would just like to add some technical amendments, change the defective date to June 30th, 3000, and add the words rebuttable before presumption, where that appears in the measure, and take this to conference. Just so you know, we do have another measure, House Bill 732, HD1, which did pass out of the Senate Judiciary, and when we go to conference, we'll just decide which measure we're going to move out. We won't do both, but I want to bring this to conference as well. So that's my recommendation, members. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 203 SD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 228 relating to fraud. On this measure, I'd like to move out a House Draft 1 merely with technical amendments. I'm not going to adopt the recommended amendments of the prosecuting attorney because I would like to allow an opportunity for deferred acceptance of a guilty or nolo contendere plea, and I don't like mandatory minimum terms of imprisonment as a principle. So I'm not going to adopt those. But I would like to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000. And move this out, take it to conference. Questions or concerns, members? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 228 SD1 with further amendments. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 487. This is the relating to statutory revision. This is where the Legislative Reference Bureau cleans up the Hawaii revised statutes or session laws to correct errors and references and clarify language and delete obsolete or unnecessary provisions. It's sort of like the cleanup squad. The cleanup squad taking care of any inadvertent messes that we created in the legislature. So I really appreciate what Legislative Reference Bureau has done here. They're comfortable with this. The Attorney General is comfortable with this. So I'd like to move this out as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 487 passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 1513 relating to public agency meetings. I'm comfortable with this language. Office of Information Practices is also comfortable with it, so that doesn't happen often. So let's go ahead and move this out as is. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 1513, passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, moving on to Senate Bill 179, relating to advisory committees. Bless you. I'm comfortable with the language in this measure, and I would like to move this out as is, but I would like to include in the standing committee report language that states that we recognize that there would also need to be technical amendments to, in Hawaii law, to change any reference to, quote, voters with special needs to, quote, voters with accessibility needs associated with the voting process, to make all relevant Hawaiian statutory text consistent with the amendment in Senate Bill 179. We cannot make all of those other changes to the Hawaii revised statutes in this bill because of the very narrow title, which is relating to advisory committees. So I just want to put into the standing committee report that we recognize we will need to make those changes in another bill at another time, but not in this one. So my recommendation is to move this out as is with that language in the standing committee report. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 179, passing as is. Any reservations or noes? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members, and all the testifiers. That there being no further business before this committee today, we are adjourned.